Everyone, thank you for coming to NAB. Thank you for attending. Take about 20 minutes of your time and try to address what we do at WIP Media, but specifically how we are trying to foster a smarter, more connected entertainment ecosystem. There's going to be a lot of buzzwords. I'll explain what those buzzwords are so they actually have some meaning to you. When the company came to me and said, okay, we want you to talk about everything you're doing as WIP Media, and we want to contextualize it for the NAB audience, I said, great, give me about an hour. And they go, nah, you got 20 minutes. So this is my attempt at doing that in 20 minutes in a way that is interesting. So thanks for tuning in. So we all know the entertainment world has changed forever. That's not news to any of you. I think that's why you're here. What hasn't changed, though, is the industry's processes. So I'm going to guess that some of you, or many of you, are probably dealing with a lot of these issues, spreadsheet hell, disconnected processes, ubiquitous content, right? I mean, the way that the industry has evolved, it's D2C, it's global. The velocity of licensing is causing complexity. So whereas before, if you think about a platform like a pay television company in the United States, 20 years ago, they had hundreds of pieces of content that you would access through a set-top box. Now you're dealing with companies that have global scale, that are dealing with tens of thousands of avails globally and still expanding. The processes that we had when we were dealing with 500 pieces of content for a platform cannot sustain, cannot support the processes needed, or cannot support the volume of licensing needed for a D2C global ecosystem where content decisioning needs to happen quickly, and it needs to happen in context of the country, in context of the audience, that's specific to the licenses. There's way too much complexity for spreadsheets to be the answer. So those old isolated systems are not just spreadsheets. You've got an avails process over here. You've got content decisioning over here. You've got metadata that lives over here. Programming happens over here. There's no transparency. There's no collaboration. There's no organization. There's roadblocks. Everywhere you turn, there's roadblocks because you have disconnected processes that are creating speed bumps that are inhibiting that velocity and inhibiting that scale. So we've hit a tipping point, right? So we're just at the beginning, right? Where we're talking about global D2C expansion. That global part is still coming. Companies like Pluto and HBO Max and Pluto and Paramount Plus, they have very aggressive international expansion plans, but they're still just sort of in the nascent phases of that. So as bad as it is today, and as much volume as we're dealing with today, 5 years from now, it's going to be orders of magnitude larger. So if we look at right now the state of content and the state of VOD, specifically all forms of VOD, EST, TVOD, AVOD, SVOD, you've got platforms that are global, you've got platforms that are regional, that are specific to countries. You have thousands and thousands of titles whose rights are going in and out of windows, whose windows are changing, and it changes from one country to the next based off of rights that you have, based off of windows and exclusivities and blackout periods. There's this constant shifting of the licenses and their windows on a territory by territory basis. So it's the velocity of licensing that is causing it's unprecedented change, but unprecedented complexity. So how content is being valued or bought and sold has to change. We need more modern processes to deal with the velocity and scale that licensing is occurring today. So if you think about those opportunities and those problems and what that looks like operationally, you have a shift towards D2C business models, which we talked about. Everybody's withholding their content. They want to put it on their platform, and they want to get their platform out there. They want to own the D2C relationship. You have these globalized content strategies. So it used to be HBO in the US. Now it's HBO Max and it's global. Need to refresh deep libraries to retain audiences. So great, you've got 5,000 pieces of content on your platform, and your platform is global, but you need to refresh 10% of that on a monthly basis in order to prevent churn. You need to acquire more subscribers, you need to acquire more viewership, you need to prevent churn, which means you're constantly refreshing a percentage of those 5,000 titles, right? Or 2,000 or 10,000. And it's specific to each country based off of rights and windows. So on top of that, you also need to engage viewers through better universal browse, better user experience, recommendation, and again, that needs to be specific to the audiences because different cultures consume different content differently. And so you need to make sure that what you are recommending, what you are merchandising is specific to those audiences. But at the same time, where we have all those needs and the reality of the velocity and scale that we have to deal with in order to present merchandise content effectively and program content effectively, you've got manual avails submission processes and manual avails review processes. We're all working with avails spreadsheets. We're all working with documents. They're different formats. There is no consistency. We have a lack of content-centric insights and OTT data gaps. Anybody know how content is performing on Netflix other than like a general sort of top 10 ranker here and there? Okay, does anybody know how content travels from the US to Germany on Netflix? And can you compare it to content on HBO Max or on Hulu or on Prime? No, because there's data gaps with OTT. There's no lack of data. There's box office data, there's linear data. You even have an element of cross-platform data limited to connected televisions. Nothing that speaks to content and what content demand is and what content viewership is globally, regardless of platform. You've got isolated teams and processes. We talked a little bit about that. We need centralized management. You need collaboration, you need transparency, you need workflows, but you need to centralize everything so it can be streamlined. And you have multiple reporting formats, which makes revenue recognition arduous and error prone. So you're a distributor, you're licensing your content out to all of these platforms. For digital, there is no centralization of that reporting. There is no equivalent for EST and TVOD and AVOD and SVOD of ComScore for box office or ComScore or Nielsen for linear data. There's no gatekeeper. So you have all these reporting formats coming back in, and you need to make use of that data. Your finance team needs to recognize revenue, but they have to deal with all of these manual processes in order to take that performance, map it to a title, map it to a license, a title ID, so you can recognize revenue against your P&L, pay out content platform partners, whatever it might be. You've got all of these systems, they're disconnected, they're siloed, they're manual. You need to streamline. So that's what we do. We help support that velocity and scale. That's what's needed in a global environment, a D2C environment, a digital environment, where licensing opportunities are plentiful, but that means that there's data and there are processes that need to support that ecosystem. So we streamline workflows for global scale, for transparency and oversight, and we help with data insights, so that cross-platform or platform-agnostic view of data, regardless of where it's playing. So if you look at that ecosystem, there's a lot we do to support it, depending on whether you are a distributor or whether you are a platform. We have solutions that can help, and our data sort of underpins all of that, along with our WIP Media Exchange, which I know a number of you have stopped by the booth, have talked to us about. I'll get into that in a little bit. If you are a distributor, we do things like helping automate avails out to your distributors. So every time you have to license content out or make a price change or there's a window change, that's another avails spreadsheet that you have to send out. We help automate that process. We help you increase sales by understanding your content performance across platforms. We're going to aggregate that reporting performance, map it to your source of truth, so you can actually run dedicated analytics off of that. You can recognize revenue. We provide you with the unique analytics and insights on content, because part of the sales process is you're going out there, you need to comp your title. You need to comp performance internally. You need to understand how your content is performing by platform, by title, by day. And we'll help your finance team automate that revenue process, the revenue recognition process. If you're a platform, all those avails out we're sending for distributors, we're going to help you aggregate those avails in. We're going to in the case of companies like Pluto or Redbox or AMC, these are all public, you can Google them. They're all using us for some combination of these processes to help streamline their avails, enrich with metadata, centralize control and visibility of their incoming content with their content partners. We're collaborating internally where it used to be disparate, siloed processes, and we're helping them automate financial processes. So that's on the sort of back office side. That is connecting and streamlining those back office processes to streamline the distribution business, the day-to-day of how the distribution business is run. But I talked a little bit about data and about specifically platform agnostic data. We also own TV Time. TV Time is an app. If you think about TV Time users, we are the equivalent of, you hear about early tech adopters. They're the first people to buy devices, to test out devices, to socialize devices. Our users are the first ones to engage with content, to find content, to socialize content. They're early content adopters. They are so engaged with their content, they actually use an app like TV Time to help them discover new content, to help them find where to watch it. They build and manage their watch lists using our app, and then they track their viewing experience. So when they report or when they view content, they report it in our app as having been viewed, and then they engage with that content in different ways. And they give us really valuable feedback about their experiences. We actually, in 2021, we won an award. We shared that award with HBO Max. We're very proud of that. HBO Max got the Judges Award for the entertainment category for the Webbies. We got the People's Voice Award. So all of those in-app engagements, people rating it on 1 to 5 stars, telling us how it made them feel, happy, sad, bored, shocked, voting for their favorite character, telling us which device they watched it on, which platform, or having conversations with other people who have also just watched that content. We aggregate all those metrics into, we aggregate all those events into metrics that matter if you're trying to understand content performance, and describe the content-audience relationship. And we do that without platform gaps, because we're not sourcing our data from a platform, we're sourcing our data from people telling us what they want to watch, and where they're watching it, and what they're currently watching. We're building all of that into affinity models, we're building that into demand models. That audience data is platform agnostic because regardless of where they're watching it, they're telling us. So we're continuously capturing, this is all in an always-on platform. This is not survey-based. This is not, again, sourcing from a platform. This is an always-on platform where all of those actions, in-app actions from yesterday, are available in the app today. In our CVM Insights service. That's where we're collecting all this data into a front-end reporting tool called CVM Insights. We're also feeding other processes as well, and we'll get into that. Here's why our data matters, right? So there's no shortage of data out there, and we're not saying use us and don't use somebody like a ComScore or a Nielsen or a Samba or a TiVo or a Parrot. Those are all valuable services, but don't use them for content evaluation. That's not what they do. Use them for social listening. Use it to find out gross box office. Use it to find out linear ratings. Those are all very valuable. You need linear ratings if you're going to buy ads on linear platforms. Social listening, if you need to understand how many people are out there talking about your content, how many you're reaching, it's valuable. But none of those should be used as a proxy for actual content evaluation, understanding the content-audience relationship. If you think about the process by which any of us, any individual goes through when you decide to watch content, it looks like this. You start with discovery. You literally become aware that something exists. Then you go through a consideration phase. You gather information about it. You read a review. You watch a trailer. You talk to friends. You hit social media. If it's My Little Pony, I know I don't have to gather information. The information gathering comes from what I already know about My Little Pony. I'm going to make a snap judgment and go, no, that's not for me. But in other cases, you do need to collect information, and you do need to talk to friends, and you come to a qualification phase. Qualification is not just, is this content interesting? Is this content interesting enough that I actually intend to watch it? That is the first signal we get, is we track that as anticipation or viewing intent. So when a TV Time user decides that content is interesting enough, it passes that qualification phase, they tell us they want to watch it by adding it to their watch list. When it becomes available, and we can do this before the title is actually released, we own the TVDB. It's a crowdsourced metadata service. As soon as a title gets announced, our users pick up on it, a record gets created, we bring that into the TV Time app so you can discover content that's not going to be released for another year. And you can start following it, and we can start looking at that viewing intent build up over time. That's our anticipation. And then they become trackers when they self-report something as having been viewed. So we can track that conversion. So what percentage of people said they wanted to watch this and then actually converted? And we can do that across platform. There is nobody else who can tell you what is a conversion rate for Netflix followers versus HBO followers versus Amazon followers. We can. And we can do it on broadcast, we can do it on theatrical, we can do it on OTT. We're platform agnostic. And ultimately we create those metrics off of sentiment, behavior, things like binge rate, conversion rate, engagement scoring, how engaged, how emotionally invested are people in content, and it's being sourced from actual users. It's not people talking in a social sphere where you may not know exactly whether they are viewers. These are people who are those early content adopters who are willingly giving us that feedback, and we're bringing that into a format so that you can do it, that always on reporting, that competitive reporting across platforms. So I'm getting a little short on time, so I'll move forward. Here's a perfect example. Marry Me was a romantic comedy released both in theaters and on Peacock by NBCU. It did wonderful in theaters. It was #1 for that weekend. It did $8 million in the US. That's only 12% of the story. The real story is 75% of people who watched Marry Me watched it on Peacock. So if you are doing competitive analysis, you are another studio, you are releasing a romantic comedy, and you want to comp it to Marry Me, without our data, you don't know that 75% of the viewership occurred on Peacock. If you're doing content strategy, and you need to know what is my release strategy for this. Do I do day and date? Do I do a theatrical exclusive? Do I reserve a 2-week window for Peacock first and then go to theaters? This is the information you need because gross box office is valuable. It's a piece of the pie, but it is not the whole pie. Gross box office used to be the sole arbiter for a theatrical film's success. You just look at the ticket sales, you rank it. Was it successful? Was it not successful? It is no longer the sole statistic by which film success should be measured. The real story is how valuable is it to an organization across platforms. So things like TV ratings, things like theatrical box office, they're a piece of the pie, but they are relics in a streaming age because they are only a piece of the pie. They are not the whole pie in the way that they used to be. Those companies need to understand that for subscriber acquisition purposes, to reduce churn. You need that contextualized performance across platforms in order to do that dedicated analysis. So our rich data helps with content strategy. Basically any role where you have to evaluate content, not evaluate advertising inventory, evaluate the content itself. If you are programming content, if you're acquiring content, if you're merchandising content, you need to understand how content is working across platforms, who's watching it, age, gender, by country. How is content working? How is this piece of content working in US? How does that compare to Brazil? How does that compare to FIGS UK in Europe? How does that compare to Saudi Arabia? It's going to be different. And so we're bringing all of that together into the exchange. So as I mentioned, all those back office processes where we're streamlining things, we're getting reporting in worldwide from the data aggregation that we're performing for studios and mapping it to their source of truth. We're bringing that in, we're combining it with our own audience data, we're modeling it into a predictive score, and then we're bringing that avails process where it used to be that spreadsheet, hell, avails out, avails in, we're putting a box around that. And we're streamlining it so you're availing content directly to buyers. If you're a seller, you're availing content directly to buyers in our platform. You have the benefit of audience data behind it with predictive scoring. This is the way that content needs to be licensed in the future. This is a streamlined content licensing ecosystem that is scalable, that will operate with velocity in the future in the way that content is being licensed today in a streaming environment. So I know I am running out of time, so hopefully you'll stop by our booth. We're 9403, we're actually right over there. We provide actionable insights, scalable connected workflows, and centralized management in a cross-platform age. So thank you all.